Like the sky, your spirit is one with me. Your wings span the mighty ocean. Your eyes see everything. The slightest of your motions can make the continents ring. Yet in all your mighty glory, vanished from the skies, leaving just another story, missed many man-made lies. They tell of how you fell from the sky.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I'm your host, Clay Douglas, and my guest today is Stan Hess. Hello, Stan. How are you?
Hey, Clayton.
Stan, you've been a subscriber of mine for many, many, many years, and a listener, I guess, on the radio too. Now you're doing one of your you're doing a radio show of your own, and you're from up around Idaho. You're near.
No, actually, Clayton. I was born in Florida, and actually, folks, my birthday is 9/11, 1944.
Cool. Somebody older than me. I'm glad to have you on my show.
Yeah, I was born in Florida at MacDill Air Base, or Army base, and then raised in Houston, Texas, and then moved to California, to the Bay Area, and I lived in California for 31 years, and then I moved up here to Idaho 8 years ago.
Beautiful up there. And,
I love it.
And let me take this opportunity to speak about another person that was born on 9/11 and died just last Saturday. Little girl, 9 years old, and her funeral is going to be on Thursday, and there's people coming down from all over the state to attend the funeral, but some of them are coming down to protect the family and the funeral, because some little church here, WBC Church in Tucson, is planning and put out a release that they're going to go protest these people's funerals, that this killer was a messenger from God to tell us we're going wrong. Now, one of the things that we wanted to talk about in the show was our spirituality. And obviously, you know, I think I'm a spiritual person. I think I'm doing the work God intended me to do, that grew me for, that trained me for, you know, the writing, the researching, the reporting. I think this is what I was supposed to do. But I'm having real problems right now with these churches and some of these religious cults. I mean, I felt like I've been defending Christianity and defending a Christian nation here for most of my life, and I'm watching these Christian identity people railing at the Jews and the blacks, and I'm seeing a Christian church here in Tucson going to go try to disrupt a little girl's funeral that was born on 9/11. Your comments, please.
Well, it's totally preposterous, and this man had all kinds of problems, and he is a victim, just like we all are, Jews, Christians, Muslims, of these people behind the scenes that want to manipulate us so that we're so busy fighting each other that we don't look at who's controlling the means of communication and economics and everything else. These people that were shot, this act was despicable. We don't need this. And just as much, we don't need all these gangbangers coming across the border from Mexico and telling us that we are part of that we are on their land, the nation of La Raza. If we were not controlling the borders of all these other countries, so-called controlling the borders of Iraq and Afghanistan and Israel and all these other places, and we were controlling our own sovereign country, we wouldn't have all this violence that we have right now, and we wouldn't have all this conflict.
Now, Gabriel Giffords, she was Jewish, so
yes.
Within 5 minutes, well, I'm sorry, within the hour after she was shot, ABC News was calling me to see if I knew the shooter or if I knew anything about this. Why? Because I speak out against Israel. Because and Gabriel Giffords was a proponent of safe borders. I mean, so there was some speculation.
Virus database has been updated.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I just wish you wouldn't update it in the middle of my show. I appreciate that. But she was on the side of the people. This was a lady that was a Republican, a Democrat, and I went to some protests that they held at her office, the Tea Parties, because they were supporting Jesse Kelly. I know Jesse Kelly. I met Jesse Kelly, and he's okay. He's but she won. She won. This is how our election system works, and she won. Now, who targeted her? Who did this? Was this just a crazy guy? Or they're trying to point it. The reason ABC News called me, the Jerusalem Post is talking about that she was targeted because she was Jewish. And I don't believe that. I believe that it could have been the federal judge there that was the target. If this was something more than just some insane 22-year-old, and he wasn't. They tried to make him out as a veteran. No, he wasn't a vet. He wasn't accepted by the Army or the Marines. He wasn't accepted. So, the press here. And both sides. I mean, we got William Rivers Pitt on Truth Out, calling all the Christians, all of the people that are trying to stand up for this country, he's calling them names. So it's the divide and conquer, Stan.
That's all it is. It's very simple.
And now, I'm sorry if it sounds anti-Semitic to say that Jews control Hollywood, Jews control the banking system, Jews control the International Monetary Fund, then I must be anti-Semitic, because it's not me that's saying that. It's the Jews that are saying that. They brag about their control. Now, just we talked a little bit off air, and I told you that people have asked me, Clay, why do you hate the Jews? I don't hate the Jews. I kind of admire them. If us white boys had it as together as they have it, we'd own the Federal Reserve, we'd own the Bank of England, we would be, and things would be done. The farmers would be working hard, the children would be healthy. Well, but we don't. We don't stick together. The Jews have a unity, and they work together on it, and that's what propelled Gabriel Giffords to her position as in the House as a congresswoman. They've done a pretty good job of that. Now, I don't agree with their methods. I don't agree with Israel. I don't agree with the Talmud and the following of the Talmud any more than I agree with the custom of Muslims sticking their nose in the ground and sticking their ass
how about much of the Old Testament that talks about brutality and mass slayings? I mean, I don't agree with that either.
That's right.
So
I don't, I pointed out that, let's see, the devil is supposed to be the king of deception, right?
I have no idea.
So what if the devil has been pretending to be God 2,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago?
I don't know, but I can tell you one thing, that if we controlled our own borders And if we had a media that was not controlled by these rich Jewish people, we would have a lot more clarity among our people about what's going on. I really, Clay, I really believe, and because you know, you're a guy like me. You interact with everybody: Muslims, Jews, Christians, black, white, whatever. We're not naive people. I was married to a Jewish woman for a short period of time. I've had Jewish girlfriends in the past. So I'm not anti-Semitic, but what I remember when I was a left-winger, and we talked about this last week, I was against the war in Vietnam. You were against the war in Vietnam also.
I volunteered for it, but they tried to kill me before I got there, so I never went.
But I had a Jewish girlfriend in San Francisco who grew up in Baltimore. And when she went back to see her family, she came back mentally ill. And she told me, she said, Stan, she said, these big Jews are so disgusting. They make me ill. She had to go into a mental institution. So what I want to say, and I want people to understand this, we have problem with these big whiteys who all they care about, these big honkies, that all they care about is feathering their nest and making money at our expense, as well as these big Jewish people, big black people, who all they care about is ripping their own people off by getting them to hate other ethnic groups. And it's going to take individual voices like Elizabeth Wright in New York State, who has been an outspoken critic of what Israel is doing. You know, the independent voices are going to have to speak up to bring clarity to this issue.
I've had Gilad Atzmon on from Israel. He's been on my show, and you know, his articles are up on the internet. You know, he's speaking up for the Palestinians. He's speaking up against the way Israel's treating the Palestinians. And I've made many trips to New York City. I've been in the, I was in the, in distribution business. So I went up to Brooklyn, Manhattan, and I walked into shop after shop after shop selling peace symbols or whatever it was, pipes, whatever I was selling at the time.
Right.
And one of the shops were owned by Christians. One of the shops were owned by a Jew. A lot of the people in the paraphernalia industry were Jewish. And and some of the people were Christian. Some of the shop owners were Christian. They all got along just fine in New York. Why can't they do that in Jerusalem?
Well, I can tell you one thing, Clay, is that I remember reading, I don't know whether it was Newsweek or U.S. News Report and World Report, and this would have been back in the 90s, where Sephardic Jews were yelling and screaming at Ashkenazi Jews, in other words, the so-called white Jews or European Jews. And I'm not going to say what they said in this newspaper article, but if it had been said by a European American or any other ethnic group, that would have been considered hate, and that would have been used as an example of how evil the ethnicity of the person who spoke whatever it was against a particular Jewish group. But there is more freedom of expression in Israel about Semitic matters than there ever has been in the United States.
Yes. I mean, I get half my information come from Jerusalem Post. I mean, if you read theirs and compare it to, they're basically telling they're basically telling us they're feeding the information, just like Southern Poverty Law is feeding the information to Homeland Security. So anybody that's opposing Israel, anybody that's opposing banksters, anybody that's steps out of line in Hollywood and talks about the Jews, or does what I did. I referred to 9/11 as an exaggerated case of Jewish lightning, and they may have tried to kill me over that.
Well, I believe again that just like that Jewish man that was on your program yesterday, and he was talking about some of the same stuff that we talk about, you know, and talked about who's controlling the media, who controlled the Bolshevik Revolution in the Soviet Union. So, you know, this internet, until they shut it down, and I really believe they'll eventually shut it down if we ever have real dialogue.
It's all set up. It's all set up. This is the internet is the greatest threat to them. They've controlled the newspapers. They've controlled the content of the newspapers for 100 years. The Rothschilds, the banksters here, bought Reuters, Associated Press. They control it. The internet has taken that control away. They're scared to death of it. That's why the Tea Parties are forming. That's how the Tea Parties are forming. That's how the meetup groups are forming. But the internet is a double-edged sword. And this is why I propose the Liberty Villages. You know, low-cost housing, people working together, creating energy devices, and creating food. You know, raising good food, feeding, because we're time. You know, they're killing us. These people, they really want to kill us. I mean, if you live too far past 65, you know, the Social Security, the deficit shortages in the Social Security might show up. You know, God help us if somebody wants to audit the Fed.
Let me bring up something, Clay, because I think it's very important. In the 1930s, there was an American journalist named Marquise Childs who went to Sweden to study the agriculture cooperative movement. And he came back and talked about this as a way for the agricultural community, the farm community, to survive. And that was through cooperation, forming co-ops. And what you're talking about, and what I believe that is so important, is for us to start working directly with the farmers, and actually would probably do us all a lot of good to go to these farmers and say, look, we'd like to do farm labor work. And go and help you, you know, plant your crops and harvest your crops, and then bring them to the cities without the middlemen, and then distribute healthy food to our people. And by doing that, we learn to cooperate between the city areas and then also the farm areas.
To me, that's what it would be. The Liberty Villages would be open to the public. You can go in there and go into the restaurant in the middle of it and taste the food, eat the food, you know, eat unchipped chicken. And
Unchipped chicken? What's that?
Unchipped chickens. That's chickens that don't comply with the animal identification system.
I didn't even know we had that.
Oh yeah, they're trying to. Oh yeah, that's the whole National Animal Identification System. They changed the name. I don't know what the new name is, but that was trying to if your chicken crosses, you got to chip all your chickens, and if a chicken crosses the road, then you got to report it to the government. It's the same thing that they're doing with the Food Safety Act. They want the government to come in and inspect your food, and if you're growing non-Monsanto, non-genetically modified food, they're even attacking you right now in California. They're going after the organic food places. So
that's where I buy a lot of my food is from the those kind of places, you know.
Yeah, and boy, if you're in New York and you want to buy some unpasteurized milk from the farmer over in Pennsylvania, you know, they'll bust him. They may bust you, and they raided the guy's farm and took his cattle away because he sold somebody in New York non-pasteurized milk, organic milk.
Yeah. God, Clayton, one thing that I think is very important, because we're always fighting this, is, and this is my credo, this is my belief, is that no matter who we are, Jewish people, Christian people, Muslim people, agnostics, people that believe in native religions, whatever it is, that we need to bypass institutions and start interacting together one-on-one to create a real livable system in this world.
It's yes, we need to do that, but we're basically a slave planet. I think we've probably been that way for 10,000 years or 100,000 years. You know, they need us to do the mining, to do the growing, but you got elitists that are sitting back and taking all of your money and interfering with the way you run your ranch, the way you run your farm, the way you run your backyard now. And to me, that's what we're fighting here. Now, I mentioned the internet being a double-edged sword. With the internet, I'm able to communicate all over the world right now. With the internet, I'm able to put my ideas up and put them in print. With the computers, I'm able I typed my first novel. It's taken me 40 years to get it over into the computer. Still haven't got it all, but I'm still working on it. Now, but that's the advantage of it, because we can find out what's happening in Argentina, what happened in Argentina, what happened in Russia. We can read Alexander Solzhenitsyn using the internet. But it also isolates it.
Okay, go ahead.
It also isolates us. It isolates us, and right now I do the show alone. And many people won't even pick up the phone to call me to talk about the show or to talk about anything we could do together. I've been active in trying to fight for this Constitution, to fight for our freedom and our liberty for 20 years. Why would nobody talk to me now?
Well, I can tell you, I have some ideas about that, and what I believe is that we need to use the lingua franca, the common language that's used, which is political correctness, in order to transform it. So I don't ever use the word race. I don't ever talk about genetics. What I talk about is community. And and that is the word that everybody, these young people especially, have been indoctrinated with. And it's okay. Community is a fine word. But we never talk about one of the ideals of the leftist movement back in the 60s, which I was a part of, which was community control. Now, Clayton, you know as well as I do, community control, states' rights, all of that stuff dovetails together. So if we have complete community control over the economics, the political, the social, the religious, then we are free individuals. And if we don't like certain communities, then we can move on to other communities. But that's what, to me, what freedom is all about.
You know, I've talked about the whole Liberty Village concept. You know, I mean, this Gabby Giffords thing has really shown it's divided. You know, everybody's picking at each other. And if you're Mexican and you go down the road and you start your little Mexican village, your little Liberty Village, and you serve tacos and enchiladas in your restaurant, and you maintain your culture, then you have no problem with that. There could be a Chinese village down the road, there could be a Muslim village over here, and you still all have the freedom to do what you want on your own property, with your own people. And I don't believe that's being racist at all. I don't believe that's being. I believe that's being fair. I mean, if the black man next door to me, if his children have the same advantages that my kids do, and the Jew and the Muslim have the same advantages that the Christians do, then that's liberty, that's freedom, and that's
but here's where I draw the line. The 1965 immigration law that was passed, where Kennedy said this would not affect the racial balance of this country, was a total lie. And it was used to import the revolution in order to divide and conquer. I am not going to feel happy in a country where I'm an ethnic minority. And this is one of the key issues which we never talk about and when we get into this immigration issue, is the fact when are we going to have a say about the immigration policies of this country? Because I hear people that say, oh, illegal is bad, but legal is good. No, I don't want legal like we've been having it, because 95% of the people that come into this country through legal immigration don't look like me, and when they show up, they have civil rights, and I don't have civil rights. There is no European American Civil Rights Act, but there are civil rights either through legislative action or through judicial or executive decree for every other ethnic group. So I am a second-class citizen in this country. So I want my civil rights. I want my group civil rights.
Yeah, we've talked about that, but that's the way. You know, every race has its own strengths. You know, we have been the farmers, we have been the ranchers, the white Europeans, and I agree with Christian identity on the point that perhaps our ancestors crossed the Caucasus Mountains to escape slavery, and I think I think the Sumerian civilizations, those basically were white people. White people have built civilizations.
Yeah, well, every group has created civilizations, but what I am concerned about is my own group self-interest. It's not to say that I want anything other than my rights, my group rights, to be respected. If we have an African American Heritage Month, why not a European American Heritage Month? In fact, I was the author of European American Heritage Month, which is celebrated in about 5 or 6 school districts in the state of California. But I will never be credited with being the author of that and be the inspiration of that, because I have bad associations. But somebody jumped me one time and said, why have you associated with certain people? I said, look, if Jesse Jackson can do outreach with the Blackstone Rangers, which is a black criminal gang in Chicago, and do outreach to the Crips and Bloods in Los Angeles in order to get them to stop being violent, why can't I reach out to my brothers and sisters in the form of outreach to get them to be nonviolent and to stand up for righteous principles? But it's a double standard.
It is. I mean, that's why only what they're trying to do right now, they just listed me in the NAACP, on the NAACP website, as being a bigot, as being a racist. And that's not true. I mean, I'm white and I'm proud of it. I'm Texan and I'm proud of it. You know, don't mean I hate everybody from Oklahoma.
That's funny.
Unless, of course, I mean, I have to have a caveat there. If they refer to us Texans as Baja Oklahomans, then we got to fight.
we better tee it up at the Cotton Bowl, huh?
Yeah. You know.
Oh God, that's funny.
but that's a point. I mean, I've asked people, you know, if you can join the ADL, if you can join the Jewish Defense League, if you can join the NAACP if you're black, why couldn't I join the Aryan Nations without being labeled a racist?
You want to hear a funny story, and I think that, you know, you were talking earlier about how if people throw statistics out, and maybe we didn't talk about this, but a friend of mine and I were talking about this last night. We are so not animated as people, those of us who've been trying to wake up people. If we start using personal anecdotes, and I'll give you one up here in northern Idaho. Actually, it was over in Spokane, Washington, which is just across the border. I was at a Unity church, and I was talking to, because I like to engage people, and this woman was talking about how wonderful it was that the Aryan Nations compound had been dismantled and the land taken over and all this. And I said, you know what? I said, there were some real misfits in the quote-unquote Aryan nations. But I said, you know, that whole group, when it started doing the dirty deeds, was being infiltrated by the federal